We can be each other's competition if you want to duke it out, girl.
In my work life, I've got that down. In my personal life, I think I let it be too relaxed where I'm like, nope, we're going to do a 180. We've already done our structure for the day.
I'm tired. I don't have the energy. I'm not myself. Hi, welcome back to Chasing Me podcast.
Welcome back, everybody.
This week, I feel like we have kind of something special. We are reviewing a little bit about two things we talked about previously. They're very relative to what we're going to go over today, which is where do you even start on your journey to self-improve, chase the best version of yourself?
Yes, if you have not heard our previous two episodes, they were about resetting our goals and then as well as distractions. So go ahead and listen back to those two and then come back to us here because we're going to go ahead and divulge a little bit more into all of that. In general, though, where do you start? At least for me, I start by defining my goal and actually just like coming back to my goals, consistently trying to make sure that I understand no matter what distraction I have in my life, that I'm like, oh, these are the goals that I want to do or accomplish this month or this year, or my why, my purpose. Like I need to follow this type of path in order to complete or accomplish those goals. So defining that is my first step. What about you?
I would say that's the only thing you can really do. There's no point of starting something if you don't have a clear idea of why you're doing it in the first place, and then clearly articulating what specifically those are. And it's not just I want to lose weight. Be specific. I want to lose 10 pounds by the end of the year. Like that's very specific. And then you easily can break that down by month and you can set smaller and smaller goals within that larger goal, which I think is something that's important to starting, is identifying the smallest microscopic step towards achieving that bigger goal that just seems out of reach. It starts with the smallest first step. Definitely.
I think that is interesting. What you said is that, within those goals, you are going to outline it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're going to create sub goals and subcategories. And I think that those subcategories are what you break out maybe by week or by day or by month. And in the last episode, I did mention that, trying to block out my time in maybe a month, more specifically within like the hours of the days within that month is one of my goals and that I'm going to try and do, because I hopefully will include that starting point for me of feeling more productive, of understanding that I can do all of this without it feeling rigid and without it feeling very cumbersome to try and like do so many things at once. That or try to like handle my emotions in a way where it's more so like I understand that I'm feeling this way, but if we stick to this time frame, I will be able to, in like a delayed gratification type of way, get to that organic type of feeling of like, oh, all of these choices I've made have now allowed me to feel more comfortable with a more structured schedule. Instead of using the word rigid, I would use structured, or, using more positive words towards the things that I feel negatively about based off of just previous experience with like other people around me, right? Like when you see people do something that it doesn't come naturally to you, I think that it makes you feel a little deterred from trying to do it because you're like, well, I actually can't do that. Or like I've tried to do that and it's only lasted for me like so long, like I can't. So then you're like, what they're doing is so rigid. Like I'm fun, I'm organic.
You don't get inspired by that though?
No, not in my mind. Like it feels, sometimes it can be inspiration, But for the most part, right, like they're just so type A in the way that they think that I'm like, I can be type A, but I don't think that it's my first and foremost thought with everything I do.
Okay. I think it's a kind of a positive and negative. Like it depends on how you view what they're doing with their life and how they're living their life. It's all subject to how you want to live your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing is, we're all trying to do something different, but we're all chasing goals that other people have achieved before. And I think something we've talked about previously is if you've seen someone who does something, like they are more scheduled, or I don't want to call it rigid because you're like, I'm not going to call it rigid. They are more rigid or scheduled, structured in their routine. What can you learn from them though? If that's something you kind of aspire to, but don't really, you're like, okay, that lifestyle doesn't quite work for me, but they seem to be getting a lot done, which my goal is to be more productive and get more done.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take that structure and kind of adapt it in your own way to work for you?
Yeah. And that is the goal, to have that be more consistent, because in my work life, I've got that down. In my personal life, I think I let it be too relaxed, where I'm like, nope, we're going to do a 180. We've already done our structure for the day. We're good. I don't need to do anything else, And I'm trying to avoid that. So I'm going to change in my mindset first, and then being more mindful, and then being more intentional with the words that I say to myself, as well as to you guys here, as well as to like any type of conversation I have, so that hopefully I won't ever revert back to my previous habit of telling myself like, well, you don't do that and you can't do that because maybe like you haven't ever committed to it long enough, or just like those negative subconscious thoughts. I don't think I've actually ever intentionally said that, but I think if I try to reflect.
I was going to ask, can you give me an example?
No, I don't.
No?
I can't.
Okay.
Like, I don't tell myself these things. I just think by my actions, from what I do, I think my actions speak those things much clearer, right? Because I am not as consistent. And by not being consistent, I think it can be a multitude of factors. However, for me, if I reflect on it, is because like, oh, well, I haven't done it consistently before in the past. Like, it's just too hard.
That kind of goes into the point of, I feel like a lot of us have every year we have these reoccurring goals that are the same as the previous year that we might have not have achieved, but we for some reason we want to give it another try, or we think that we want to give it another try. Sometimes new goals, I believe, are easier to achieve if you still structure it out and set smaller attainable goals than ones you've tried to achieve previously, because you have this kind of like demoralizing idea about it already in your head before you even start. You're like, oh, well, I didn't achieve it the last 2 times. So maybe that's when you get a month in and you're like, oh, well, you actually start seeing progress towards something, and then you actually just revert backwards because there's a term and I'm not thinking of the term right now, but it's, self-sabotage. You self-sabotage yourself out of goals. And I think that might be an underlying cause of a goal that you've tried to achieve multiple times and you haven't achieved it. And at a certain point, you self-sabotage. You're like, well, I've never achieved it before, so I'm just going to stop myself right here in my tracks, and you do it so subconsciously. I think it's not even, you don't think it's there, but yeah, I know I do that.
Yeah.
I self-sabotage the crap out of a lot of my goals. And I'm like, oh, I've never achieved it before. Why now? Why is Erica good enough to do it now?
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I think that's a big one, is the self-sabotage.
I think self-sabotage, and then what I also was going to say is self-doubt. right? I think it's hand in hand.
Yeah.
And that was just one word that when you said self, I was like, oh, self-doubt.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's just going to be harder to see yourself in it and to see yourself accomplishing it if you've never done it before and if you've tried.
Yeah. No, I
And
totally agree.
I think that by starting off by doing that outline, having your structure, starting those goals, like that's the first step. And then it really is more so just taking that action and then holding yourself accountable, or having partners within your life, or like having friends and anybody, family members that hold you accountable in a way that's not going to make you feel bad about yourself is what's so important, because people can hold you accountable, but make you feel like you are a piece of shit. And that's not great. I would not recommend that because I don't think you're going to be motivated at all to try and continue it if that's the way that it comes across. So don't be afraid to speak up with like the type of motivation that I think works best for you. I think that I don't do it enough in my own life with my friends or family. It's like, hey, listen, I really enjoy it when you tell me this type of feedback. Not that I think about it all of the time, but I do definitely notice when I react to something like negatively. I'm like, oh, I didn't really like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think we shy away so much from being honest with each other. A good example, I thought about this on the way over here. We've been trying better about, we're committed to this podcast, but we know we both could give it a little bit more and dig a little deeper into it. And I think that there's something about letting each other slide and not feeling like I'm keeping you accountable. I'm like, oh, no worries, don't do that. Like, if I slide, you're like, oh, it's okay. And if you slide, I'm like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, no, we should really try to hold each other accountable, because we're not that you have to have this like repercussion of not getting the thing done or doing whatever, but once you start letting yourself slide, then it becomes okay. Same with, not running, same with, maybe not staying focused at work, and it just builds up, and then you're like, okay, whatever, it is whatever. And being honest with people. I think it sounds, this is a thing that just popped in my mind, but they say that in like Asian cultures, it's so much more common for friends to tell friends, don't know if this is healthy or not, but that, oh, you're gaining a little weight. Like, you're becoming chubby, or like you're not yourself. Like what, like, and it kind of is like, what's wrong? Like, what, are you okay? It becomes more of a, I don't know if it's always like that. There might be some bullying that goes on in there. I don't know. But there is like this voice of concern, instead of being, oh, I was on the phone with my sister. I was talking about being home in Kansas, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm as plump as I've ever been. And she immediately is like, oh no, like that's like, oh, Erica, you're fine. You're not. And I'm like, I get that. Yeah. On the world spectrum of like, I know I'm not like obese. Like I get that. Like, but for me, I feel I'm tired. I don't have the energy. I'm not myself. That should be a red flag to my friends, to my sister, that, when I tell her that, but I'm also a broken record. So it's kind of a catch-22, but I think we all should just be a little bit more open and honest with our friends and our family when it comes to, if you see something wrong, say it. Like if they're not themselves, say it. Keeping each other accountable. Like, you told me you were going to do this. What happened? It's like, okay, you're just letting yourself down at the end of the day. Like, I have nothing to do with it, but you told me you wanted to do that. Let's make it happen. It's that balance between being honest and then being supportive, I think. But
yeah, I think the only time I've ever given criticism was definitely in the workplace. As being a manager, I do have to. And my approach whenever giving criticism is always more so like, we do this now, right? Or we try to hold ourselves accountable to maintain a certain level of consistency. And then if we see a mistake, it's not an issue. However, that mistake can't reoccur, right? It's more so like it shouldn't. It's so small. It's so just finite in such a detailed manner that it's not a hard task. It's just a detailed task. So I can't really understand how to relate it back into my personal life so much more. But I think that the way I would approach it is more so like, hey, are you having a hard time with maybe external things that you can't focus on this? If so, let's restructure. Because I don't ever want, at least for any feedback I give people, to make it seem like I'm not willing to be flexible with your emotional state, because I definitely understand that sometimes it's not so much of like that you're not committed. It's more so that you aren't able to necessarily provide that much time to it emotionally.
But if it's something that's wrong, wouldn't you make it a priority and spend more time on it? Like if something's wrong, like we tend to spend more time thinking about it, focused on it, because you want to change. Like you don't want to stay stagnant. I think the theme of this topic also is like, where do you start? Stagnation is the worst thing you can do. And I think just, yeah. So wouldn't you want to take like a first step to try to...
Definitely changing it. But I think it's when you approach somebody with criticism, it's being emotionally aware of maybe where they're at, so that it's not so much just a statement and it's more so a...
Oh yeah, I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, I want you to like tell me like, oh Erica, you're getting fat. Like no, like no, that's not what I'm saying. But it's and I think it's a personal thing. It's a personal thing between friends and family or sisters, whatever. How you communicate with each other, and
yeah.
But I feel like because you're close with them, you should be able, like if you're close with them and you genuinely have a connection with them, they want the best for you. And if they know the best for you is not binge watching stuff until 2 a.m., spending all your money on takeout and then, not being productive at work and like doing those negative things. I think it's all depends on each individual relationship, but yeah, I feel like we should just do a better job, all of us, to try to make them stay more committed to changing that. Yeah. Understanding their emotional state is the key first thing. Like, one, are you okay? Then next, you have to ask, like, how can I help you get out of that? Sometimes they're not ready to change. Sometimes they want to just kind of sit with it, which is fine. Just don't sit too long because, again, you can't think yourself out of a situation. You really can't. You need to take action. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, so once you get your critique and or give criticism, it's more so from there understanding that there might be some conflict within yourself. There might be some conflict that you have maybe with the person that's giving the critique. Not in the sense that you're never going to talk to them again, but maybe you don't know how to emotionally like understand where this is coming from, because it could be a new conversation that you're having with them. So just be aware and mindful of like your feelings and don't just react. That would be the second subset of that second step. Is be aware, write it down, and then from there I think it's taking that first step of, okay, you've defined your goal, you've created that sub goal, now you've blocked out that time, now it's time to take action within what you said that you would like to do. How are you going to hold yourself accountable for it? Are you going to have a friend be that person, or are you going to try to do it within yourself and that self-discipline? Or maybe it is more so you're going to put it online so that you have this online audience that is going to go ahead and be like, hey, you said that you're doing all these things, but you're not doing them actually, or you haven't talked about doing them. There are a lot of different ways that, at least me being 30, that I am doing so differently than I did in my 20s. Like in my 20s, I never told anybody any of these things. It was all about fun all the time. And now in my 30s, I'm like, oh, like I want to prioritize being the best person that I possibly can be. So by having accountability partners, by being accountable for myself, by sharing it all with you guys, like I'm doing this now. And I think that if I was in a relationship, I would have them as well holding me accountable. So I think there's lots of different ways that you can start.
I've recently realized because I don't have that like partner in crime to keep me accountable, I've realized that sometimes I enjoy setting my goals up or I'm giving it a try right now. We'll see how it goes. I'll let you know. But the sense of competition with oneself. So I've started doing this thing where I like write down. So I played volleyball when I was growing up, and I love the concept of games to 25, sets to 25. And what I've been doing is setting down, like writing goals. So it's a game, just like anything else. I create like this fictional person, and then I create like myself. I put my name on the other side of the scoreboard. And what I've done is it's first to 25. You can only make 1 point. You only can gain 1 point a day. You have to you have to complete everything on the list to get that point. And then the first one, obviously to 25 wins. So what I've created and the things on the list is like getting up early, like at 6 a.m., whatever my time is. It's no electronics past 10 and like asleep by 10:30. No drinking, keeping to my meal plan, things like that. And for me, it has had a positive effect. But I got out of it and I've had to kind of like think about restarting, which again, it's not really fair, but I can restart if I put the set, they've already won a game, like this idea of not losing. For me, it's a competition with myself. And it takes me away from comparing myself and my life to other people. And I am daily just playing a game against myself, a previous version of myself against this new version I want to be. And it's so weird to think about it, but either the old Erica's going to win or the new Erica's going to win. And honestly, I'm really rooting for the new one. So I've realized that I like the structure of competition because I don't have it anymore. Yeah, I'm competitive. I'm not a sore loser by any means, but it's a motivator for me to like want to try again and prove you wrong and do the thing. So I realized that competition is a unique way for me to structure some of my like daily goals. Just that lifestyle, that's the lifestyle bit that I kind of want to change and develop. So we'll give it a try. We'll see how it goes.
I like that.
So yeah.
That's so fun.
Shout out to all my volleyball girls. If you listen, I don't know, but yeah,
that's great. I've never heard anybody else say this. Were you inspired at all by anybody or like by doing this?
I was inspired by an anime. An anime called Haiku, and basically it's this high school team that plays volleyball. And I'm not kidding you. I thought I liked the volleyball before. This makes you just want to go play it more, but the determination, and that's what Japanese animes does. It's the determination of the characters to never quit, never give up. And they always kind of have these like rivalries with each other. Even on the same team, they're like, your determination to be a better player is making me the drive I have to be a better player. Because yes, we're all on the same team, but I want to one up you as well. Like,
yeah,
this is
competitiveness.
This idea of these nemesis and like these, it's a really unique thing to play on. And I think that's, if I'm competitive with my friends. Like I have friends that are, doing their own thing and being successful. I'm like, dang, how can I catch up? How can I do the things? If you all of a sudden, moved out into like $1 million house and was like this new Alex, I'd be like, crap, I'm behind. Okay. Like turn up a notch, like turn up those gears. Like, but I have like a couple friends like that. but they don't live here in LA. So it's like, okay, they don't inspire me like daily because they're not around me.
Yeah.
Like, so we can be each other's competition if you want to duke it out, girl. I'm kidding. So,
oh goodness.
In a fun way. Like I enjoy playful competition. Like it's something that I gravitate towards.
I think competition is so natural in some ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I can't say I've ever done what your exercise was, or I've ever heard it. So I was really, I was really interested in understanding that was all your idea. Like they didn't say that was an exercise in the anime.
Oh no, it's literally just volleyball players playing volleyball.
But it's just like your
idea. No one dies. No one's parents die. Like no, in normal anime, it's like there's all this like traumatic back history. Nope. He just I guess he's kind of short. Like the main character, he's short and he's like overcoming. He was inspired by someone he saw play when he was little, and he then is like, I'm not going to let my height deter me from wanting to play this amazing sport.
Yeah.
And no, I came up with the structure because I'm like, I don't play volleyball anymore. I don't have that like raw competition in my life anymore. It's gone. Mm-hmm. Man, I miss it. I miss my volleyball days.
You should join a club. Okay, maybe for another time. But I definitely think that you have such a great point that you can find your own sense of agency throughout the way that you want to start, or maybe the way that you want to try to progress within that starting process by inspiration from, maybe it is an anime, or maybe it's an inspiration from a mentor. There are so many different ways that I think you can either look internally or externally to get you started. And that is, in my opinion, how you start from, setting those goals, and then maybe from moving past any distractions.
Yeah. I also wanted to note something that I've done with my list of the couple weeks ago. I broke down like house and living and like all my different buckets. What I've done with some of them is to help with those baby steps in the visualization behind seeing yourself achieve those goals. Is as you're creating those baby steps, you're actually creating you're able to visualize yourself achieving these things, and you're walking yourself through the process. And when you do that and you're like, actually, that's not that hard. Mm-hmm. It's really not. Because you see the big goal, if you can break it down to these smaller steps, but actually walk yourself through each step, kind of feeling that feeling of achieving those even before you start, that in itself can be a motivation. And I've enjoyed like breaking it down. Like, I'm going to do this next. With my finance one, it's like, I'm going to hit this number in my checking account. Then I'm going to move it over to this. And like, I line by line, I did the things, and yeah, you just, it's more achievable when you break it down. So I think that's how you get started. I think that just get going, and then the snowball effect can kind of take its purpose. And that's what it does. It just creates that momentum for you. So go create your momentum, get started. Let us know what works for you, because obviously volleyball competition works for me. So please let us know. You can please subscribe. Let us know in the comments what works for you, and please give this video a thumbs up as well. Thank you so much.
Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.